Hey everyone, All in Arrowhead here. Week 13 delivered a mix of big wins, surprising upsets, and performances that are starting to define playoff positioning. On Thanksgiving, the Cowboys defeated the Chiefs behind a balanced attack from Dak Prescott and Javonte Williams, while CeeDee Lamb made several clutch receptions to help Dallas edge Kansas City. The Lions fell short against the Packers despite Jared Goff throwing for multiple touchdowns and Jameson Williams racking up big receiving yards, showcasing Detroit's offensive potential even in defeat. Chicago beat the Eagles on Black Friday with Caleb Williams orchestrating key drives, DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai providing consistent production on the ground, and the defense forcing turnovers at pivotal moments to secure the win. The Bengals dominated the Ravens, with Joe Burrow spreading the ball efficiently in their ground game complementing an aggressive passing attack, while the Bills controlled the game against the Steelers behind Josh Allen's precision and a strong offensive line performance. The Jaguars rolled past the Titans, with Trevor Lawrence connecting on multiple touchdown passes and Travis Etienne making explosive plays in the open field. Carolina upset the Rams in a thriller, relying on solid quarterback play from Bryce Young and a defense that forced several key turnovers, giving them a statement win and proving they can compete with playoff-caliber teams. The Panthers, Patriots, Giants, and 49ers are on bye this week, marking the final four teams in the league to have a week off and giving them an opportunity to rest and recover as the playoff picture continues to take shape. With every other team in action, Week 14 presents a crucial opportunity for squads to solidify their playoff hopes or make up ground in a tightening race. Every matchup carries added weight, and standout performances on both sides of the ball will be critical as teams look to finish the regular season strong. Let's get into the games! The Cowboys enter Week 14 at 6-5-1 after a dramatic 31-28 Thanksgiving win over the Chiefs, a game where Dak Prescott delivered one of his cleaner performances of the year with 320 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, repeatedly attacking the middle of the field and beating Kansas City's blitz looks with quick timing throws. CeeDee Lamb continued to operate as the engine of the offense, racking up 112 yards and a touchdown on 7 catches, while drawing extra attention that opened opportunities for George Pickens and Jake Ferguson on intermediate routes. Dallas also got a major spark from the run game, highlighted by Malik Davis's 43-yard touchdown burst that flipped momentum early in the third quarter. The defense had an uneven outing, allowing several extended drives, but Jadeveon Clowney and DeMarvion Overshown generated timely pressure late, forcing Patrick Mahomes into consecutive throwaways that set up the Cowboys' final clock-killing possession. On the other side, Detroit comes in at 7-5 after a 31-24 loss to the Packers on Thanksgiving, a game where Jared Goff threw for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns and showed strong command in the second half after a slower start. Jameson Williams delivered his most electric outing of the season with 144 yards and a long fourth-quarter touchdown that briefly reignited Detroit's hopes, and Jahmyr Gibbs added several key runs that consistently softened Green Bay's front seven. But Detroit's offense stalled on a pair of fourth-down attempts, and the defense struggled to get off the field, giving up multiple third and medium conversions that swung momentum in the Packers' favor. Still, the Lions moved the ball well, created explosive plays, and showed plenty of resilience despite the loss. With Detroit hungry to steady their season and facing a Dallas team that can be inconsistent on defense from drive to drive, I'm picking the Lions to bounce back and climb to 8-5, while the Cowboys fall to 6-1. Tennessee walks into Week 14 at 1-11 and now officially eliminated from playoff contention after a rough 25-3 loss to Jacksonville that showed just how far the wheels have come off. The Titans generated barely anything offensively. Cam Ward spent most of the afternoon under siege, taking multiple drive-killing sacks, and the run game never found a rhythm as Tony Pollard was repeatedly hit behind the line. Their best scoring opportunity came early in the second quarter, but even that stalled out into a short field goal, and from there the offense produced a string of 3-and-outs that left the defense gassed. Tennessee's defense actually held up reasonably well early, forcing several Jacksonville field goals and getting a red zone stop, but once the offense kept handing the ball back in bad field position, The dam broke and the Jags pulled away with long, clock-draining drives in the second half. Cleveland didn't look much better in their 26-8 loss to the 49ers, but at least their tape had identifiable strengths. Shedeur Sanders hit a few chunk plays through the air, including a well-timed touchdown to Harold Fannin Jr., while Quinshon Judkins ran hard between the tackles and helped the Browns piece together a couple sustained drives. Defensively, they battled early with limiting explosive plays and forcing third and longs, but as the offense failed to capitalize and field position flipped, San Francisco started leaning on Christian McCaffrey and the quick game until Cleveland eventually wore down. Both teams are slumping, but Tennessee looks completely directionless on offense right now, while Cleveland, despite the loss, still shows enough defensive bite and functional structure to be competitive for stretches. So I'm taking the Browns to move to 4-9 and dropping Tennessee to 1-12. The Seahawks come into Week 14 at 9-3 after a commanding 26-0 shutout of the Minnesota Vikings, a game where Seattle's defense set the tone early and never let up. Linebacker Ernest Jones had a breakout performance with 2 interceptions, including an 85-yard pick six, while the defensive line and secondary pressured the quarterback relentlessly, holding the Vikings to just 162 total yards and forcing 4 turnovers in the air. The Seahawks offense complemented the defense with efficient ball control and a balanced attack, as quarterback Sam Darnold completed 14 of 26 passes for 128 yards, finding A.J. Barner and Jackson Smith-Njigba for multiple key gains, while running back Zach Charbonnet carried the load on the ground, totaling 52 yards and a 17-yard rushing touchdown. Kicker Jason Myers added 4 field goals, 2 from beyond 50 yards, helping Seattle extend leads and control the pace. The Falcons enter at 4-8 after a hard-fought 27-24 loss to the New York Jets, a game highlighted by quarterback Kirk Cousins throwing for 234 yards and a touchdown, and running back Bijan Robinson rushing 23 times for 142 yards and a touchdown, with Tyler Algier adding a short yardage score. Despite the offensive production, Atlanta's defense struggled to contain sustained drives, particularly late in the fourth quarter, allowing the Jets to march down the field for a 56-yard walk-off field goal, exposing weaknesses in coverage and tackling. With Seattle's defense continuing to dominate and their offense maintaining balance between the run and pass, while limiting turnovers, and Atlanta still showing inconsistency in defensive lapses, the Seahawks enter this matchup with momentum and multiple playmakers poised to capitalize. I'm picking Seattle to win and improve to 10-3, while the Falcons fall to 4-9. The Colts enter Week 14 at 8-4 after a frustrating and often self-inflicted 20-16 loss to the Texans, a game where Daniel Jones threw for 201 yards and 2 touchdowns, but the offense repeatedly sputtered at the worst possible moments, including 2 red zone trips that produced only field goals, and a late 4th and short where Jonathan Taylor, who finished with 85 tough yards on 21 carries, was stuffed after the Texans overloaded the interior. Even with moments of promise like Jones's beautifully layered touchdown to Alec Pierce and Cameron Bynum's early interception that set up a short field score, Indianapolis never seized control and spent the entire afternoon playing catch-up while failing to generate a consistent rhythm. On the other side, the Jaguars also sit at 8-4 but arrive with a very different tone after a dominant 25-3 win over Tennessee that looked every bit as lopsided as the score suggests, with Trevor Lawrence throwing for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns, Jacoby Myers carving up the Titans for 90 yards and a score, and Jacksonville's offense stringing together long, patient drives, including an 84-yard opener and a 71-yard touchdown drive in the second half, that kept Tennessee's defense on the field and out of answers. Defensively, the Jaguars controlled every inch of the game, holding the Titans to only 188 total yards, forcing 2 fumbles, and getting 3 sacks on Cam Ward, 2 of them by Josh Hines Allen, while never allowing Tennessee to establish anything on the ground or through the air. With the Colts struggling to finish drives, failing to impose the run when it matters, and showing leakiness on long defensive possessions, and with the Jaguars playing their most complete brand of football all year, balanced offense, opportunistic defense, and command of game flow, I'm taking Jacksonville to move to 9-4 and drop the Colts to 8-5. The Commanders enter Week 14 at 3-9 after a brutal 27-26 overtime loss to the Denver Broncos, a game where quarterback Marcus Mariota showed flashes of mobility and late drive poise, engineering a potential game-winning touchdown drive in OT and finding Terry McLaurin for the score, but a tipped two-point conversion attempt sealed their fate, as Denver's defense rose when it mattered. The Commanders' run game was more effective than usual, with backs like Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols grinding out yardage, but Washington still struggled with consistency in pass protection and red zone execution. Defensively, they bent too often in critical moments, allowing key third down conversions and failing to generate a game-deciding stop in overtime. On the other side, the Vikings are limping into this matchup after a stinging 26-0 shutdown at the hands of the Seattle Seahawks, a performance that exposed just how thin Minnesota's margin for error has become. Rookie QB Max Brosmer, making his first career start, threw 4 interceptions and was sacked 4 times, finishing with a low passer rating while the Vikings managed only 162 total yards and converted 2 of 10 third downs. The offensive line failed to protect and the run game never got going, while defensively Minnesota couldn't contain Seattle's mix of pass rush, opportunistic turnovers, and efficient rushing led by Zach Charbonnet. Both teams come in desperate for a win, Washington trying to shake off heartache and get some momentum, Minnesota trying to stop the bleeding and regain confidence. I'm leaning toward the Commanders finally getting back in the win column. Their ability to mix the run with Mariota's mobility gives them a slight edge. I'm picking Washington to win, improving to 4-9, while Minnesota falls to 4-9. The Bengals enter Week 14 off a convincing 32-14 win over the Ravens on Thanksgiving, snapping a 4-game skid and showing marked improvement on both sides of the ball. Joe Burrow completed 24-46 passes for 261 yards and 2 touchdowns, connecting with Andre Yoshivas for a 29-yard score and Tanner Hudson for a critical red zone touchdown, while Jamar Chase led the receiving corps with 7 catches for 110 yards, consistently threatening the secondary. Chase Brown contributed 78 rushing yards on 15 carries, helping keep the offense balanced and the Ravens' pass rush in check. Cincinnati's defense was dominant, forcing 5 turnovers, pressuring Lamar Jackson throughout, and scoring on a pivotal interception that swung momentum late in the second half. Linebackers in the secondary were particularly effective in limiting explosive plays and controlling the clock, helping set up favorable field position for the offense. The Bills, meanwhile, come in at 8-4 after a 26-7 win against the Steelers, where Josh Allen completed 15 of 23 passes for 123 yards with a passing touchdown and added a rushing score, while James Cook led a dominant ground attack with 144 yards on 32 carries. Buffalo's defense forced multiple turnovers, disrupted Aaron Rodgers' timing, and even scored on a strip sack return, maintaining constant pressure and controlling the tempo of the game. Both teams head into this matchup with strong recent performances, Cincinnati riding momentum offensively and showcasing opportunistic defense, while Buffalo is fueled by a balanced attack and aggressive defensive play that has stifled opposing offenses, giving Buffalo's ability to sustain drives, control the line of scrimmage, and force mistakes. I'm picking the Bills to win and improve to 9-4, while the Bengals drop to 4-9. The Saints limp into Week 14 at 2-10 with playoff hopes long gone after a gutsy but ultimately unsuccessful 21-17 loss to the Dolphins, where rookie quarterback Tyler Shuck tossed for 239 yards and 2 touchdowns, and wideout Devon Bailey hauled in the go-ahead score late, only for a pick 2 by Miami and a turnover on downs to end New Orleans' comeback attempt. The offense showed signs of life, multiple third down conversions, some big chunks through the air, and a drive deep into Dolphins territory, but the red zone remains a pain point and the run game offers almost no relief. On defense, the Saints occasionally pressured the passer and kept Miami out of the end zone on a few drives, but soft tackling and blown assignments allowed the Dolphins to grind out enough first downs to chew up clock and prevent New Orleans from mounting a second comeback. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers arrive at 7-5, fresh off a gritty 20-17 win over the Cardinals, in which veteran running back Bucky Irving rushed for 61 yards and a touchdown. Quarterback Baker Mayfield completed several key passes, including one to left tackle Tristan Wirfs for his first career receiving touchdown, and Tampa Bay's defense came up big late, as safety Antoine Winfield Jr. picked off a red zone pass, while linebacker Servosia Dennis broke up a final fourth down attempt to seal the win. Special teams added another dagger with a 57-yard field goal by Chase McLaughlin that pushed the lead to 3 entering the fourth quarter, with Tampa Bay showing resilience across offense, defense, and special teams, while New Orleans struggles to sustain drives and protect the ball inside opposing 20s. I'm backing the Buccaneers to get the win and move up to 8-5, while the Saints drop to 2-11. Pittsburgh Steelers enter Week 14 at 6-6 after a rough 26-7 home loss to the Bills, a game that highlighted serious struggles on both sides of the ball. Offensively, Aaron Rodgers was under constant pressure, finishing 10 of 21 for just 117 yards and throwing a costly strip sack that was returned for a touchdown. The running game offered little relief as the line failed to open holes, and Jaylen Warren managed just a single rushing touchdown on limited carries. Receivers struggled to get separation, and the offense failed to sustain any drives beyond the red zone, leaving the Steelers with one of their lowest yardage outputs of the season. Defensively, Pittsburgh was gashed on the ground, giving up 249 rushing yards and struggling to generate consistent pressure on Josh Allen. Missed tackles and blown assignments allowed the Bills to convert critical third downs and dominate time of possession, further wearing down a defensive front already dealing with injuries. Meanwhile, the Baltimore Ravens also sit at 6-6 after a 32-14 loss to the Bengals on Thanksgiving, a contest that exposed uncharacteristic errors and inefficiencies. Lamar Jackson finished with 246 passing yards and a touchdown, but 2 fumbles and an interception disrupted the team's rhythm, and Baltimore's usually dominant defense failed to generate turnovers or keep the opponent off the field in key moments. The rushing attack, led by Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell, produced 2 touchdowns, yet the offense struggled to sustain drives consistently outside of those scoring plays. Defensively, the Ravens were inconsistent, allowing explosive gains and failing to pressure Joe Burrow when it mattered most, underscoring a need for sharper gap discipline and tighter coverage in crucial situations. As both teams search for stability and try to correct mistakes from their respective losses, this divisional matchup takes on added significance, with Pittsburgh needing to protect Rodgers and establish the run, and Baltimore looking to clean up turnovers and tighten defensive execution. I'm giving the edge to the Ravens, who have a more balanced attack despite the setback, projecting Baltimore to improve to 7-6, while Pittsburgh falls to 6-7. The Dolphins come into this matchup at 5-7 after a gritty 21-17 home win over the New Orleans Saints, a game marked by a dominant first half and enough poise under pressure late. Running back Devon Achane carried the load early with a 29-yard touchdown run and helped give Miami a 16-0 halftime cushion, while the defense forced multiple Saints 3-and-outs and logged several sacks to keep New Orleans off balance. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa was far from sharp, completing 12 of 23 for 157 yards with an interception, but Miami leaned on its front seven and Achane's explosiveness to control time of possession. The lead evaporated when New Orleans rallied behind a late touchdown pass from Tyler Shuck to Devon Vele, but a pick 2 and a turnover on downs preserved the victory for Miami. The Jets, now 3-9, enter Week 14 off a dramatic 27-24 victory over the Atlanta Falcons, in which veteran kicker Nick Folk drilled a 56-yard field goal through a heavy mist as time expired. Quarterback Tyrod Taylor delivered despite the conditions, 19 of 33 for 172 yards, a touchdown pass, and even a rushing TD, while receiver Adonai Mitchell paced the offense with 102 yards and a score. New York's defense bent often under Atlanta's run game, but came up huge when it mattered, forcing a late punt and sealing the win with good pressure that disrupted what looked like a decisive drive. Going into this matchup, Miami will have to sharpen its passing game and avoid second-half defensive lapses, but with its running game and pass rush still doing damage, it feels like a favorable spot against a Jets offense that's inconsistent and thin at receiving depth outside Mitchell. New York showed poise last week, but sustaining that under fresh pressure won't be easy. I'm leaning toward the Dolphins to bounce back, improving to 6-7, while the Jets drop to 3-10. The Broncos head into Week 14 at 10-2 after surviving a 27-26 overtime battle with Washington, where Bo Nix threw for 321 yards with a touchdown plus an interception and leaned heavily on his playmakers late, including R.J. Harvey's physical red zone running that produced the overtime score. Denver's offense piled up chunk plays through the air, finishing with well over 400 total yards, while their defense, despite being tested, made the timely play when it mattered most, with linebacker Nick Bonito batting down the Commanders' two-point conversion attempt and preserving the win. That victory marks the Broncos' 10th of the season and continues their momentum as a top contender in the AFC. On the other side, the Raiders come in at 2-10 and officially eliminated from playoff contention after a 31-14 loss to the Chargers, a game where their offense never really found traction. Geno Smith threw for just 178 yards with one touchdown and two interceptions, struggled under pressure, and completed barely over half his passes as the Chargers' front consistently collapsed the pocket. Las Vegas's run game didn't offer much help either, managing only 83 yards on the ground, with no individual rusher breaking 40 yards. Even their lone bright spot, a 42-yard touchdown to Trey Tucker, wasn't nearly enough to counter a defense that surrendered over 400 yards and allowed the Chargers to convert 8 third downs while repeatedly giving up explosive gains. Given Denver's ability to finish drives, their resilience in late-game situations, and the Raiders' continued inconsistency on both sides of the ball, I'm taking the Broncos to move to 11-2, while Las Vegas drops to 2-11. The Rams come into Week 14 at 9-3 after a tough 31-28 road loss to the Carolina Panthers, a game where turnovers and defensive breakdowns undid what had been a dominant season. Quarterback Matthew Stafford threw 2 interceptions in the first half, including one returned 48 yards for a touchdown, and late in the fourth quarter was strip-sacked with the Rams driving for a potential go-ahead score. The fumble recovery by Carolina essentially ended Los Angeles' chance to escape with a win. Despite that, Stafford still connected on 2 touchdown passes to Davante Adams, and running back Blake Corum helped spark a ferocious comeback drive with a 34-yard burst, but the Rams' defense repeatedly failed to get off the field, especially on fourth down conversions and big passing plays in the second half, and that collapse snapped their 6-game win streak and left them reeling ahead of this week. The Cardinals slump into this game at 3-9 after a narrow 20-17 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that officially eliminates them from playoff contention. In that game, quarterback Jacoby Brissett completed 29 of 40 for 301 yards and 2 touchdowns, and tight end Trey McBride hauled in a score on 8 receptions for 82 yards. The offense showed fight, but the defense couldn't get a timely stop, especially on the Buccaneers' late field goal drive, and missed tackles and subpar pressure left them unable to force a turnover when it mattered. With Arizona's morale clearly shaken and defensive discipline lacking, this is a rough matchup. The Rams still have top-tier offensive weapons and a potent pass rush that should exploit the Cardinals' weaknesses, and LA will be motivated to rebound and reassert dominance in the division. I'm picking the Rams to bounce back with a solid road win, improving to 10-3, while the Cardinals finish the week at 3-10. The Bears arrive at 9-3 heading into Week 14 after a convincing 24-15 Black Friday win over the Eagles, a game where their ground game was absolutely dominant. Kyle Monangai racked up 130 rushing yards and a touchdown, and DeAndre Swift added 125 yards and a score, combining for 255 total rushing yards in a classic run-and-control-the-clock performance that turned the Eagles' pass-heavy attack into one-dimensional predictability. Chicago outgained Philadelphia 425 yards to 317 and maintained possession with long chew-the-clock drives, while their defense held firm when it counted, forcing an interception and bottling up the Eagles' offense in the second half, limiting explosive plays and keeping Jalen Hurts from finding consistent rhythm. Meanwhile, the Packers come in at 8-3-1 after a 31-24 Thanksgiving win over the Lions, a game defined by explosive plays and clutch decision-making. Jordan Love threw 4 touchdowns and converted multiple fourth-down tries, including 2 that resulted in scores, finishing 18 of 30 for 234 yards and spreading the ball around. Dontavian Wicks reeled in 6 catches for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Christian Watson caught a 51-yard bomb that flipped momentum in Green Bay's favor. The Packers' defense also stepped up when needed, with Micah Parsons logging 2.5 sacks and several pressures that disrupted Detroit's rhythm, especially on 3rd and 4th downs. On paper, this one shapes up as a battle between Chicago's physical clock-controlling style and Green Bay's big play offense and aggressive mindset, but I'm leaning toward the Packers to continue riding their playoff push wave, the kind of aggressiveness in critical moments that sneaks you wins down the stretch. I'm picking Green Bay to move to 9-3-1, while the Bears drop to 9-4. The Texans enter Week 14 at 7-5 after a hard-fought 20-16 win against the Colts, a game defined by C.J. Stroud moving the offense efficiently, completing 22 of 35 passes for 276 yards and a touchdown, with Nico Collins providing a key 7-yard score late in the game to put Houston ahead. The running game helped control the clock, and the defense bent but didn't break, containing Jonathan Taylor on critical 3rd downs and keeping the Colts off the scoreboard in the final minutes. Houston did have some sloppy moments. Stroud threw an interception, and the Colts were able to gain chunk plays on occasional pass attempts, but overall the team executed just enough to earn the victory. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are 6-6 after a 31-28 loss to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, a game in which Patrick Mahomes threw for 4 touchdowns and 261 yards, yet Kansas City struggled with penalties, inconsistent offensive line play, and a running game that failed to sustain drives, with Kareem Hunt managing just 58 yards on 14 carries. Kansas City's defense also had issues, allowing the Cowboys to convert 9 of 16 third down attempts and giving up several explosive plays that kept drives alive. Despite the struggles, the Chiefs' offense remains one of the league's most dangerous units, capable of scoring in bunches and quickly erasing deficits. For Houston, sustaining their momentum and pressuring Mahomes will be key, but Kansas City's overall firepower and ability to make adjustments under pressure gives them the edge. I'm giving the nod to the Chiefs to rebound at home, moving to 7-6, while the Texans fall to 7-6. The Eagles are coming off a 24-15 loss to the Bears, where turnovers and inconsistent offensive execution plagued them throughout the game. Jalen Hurts threw for 230 yards and 2 touchdowns to A.J. Brown, but Philadelphia struggled to convert the red zone and failed to sustain drives, allowing Chicago to dominate time of possession with a ground attack that racked up over 280 yards, exposing weaknesses in the Eagles' front 7. The run game was also very inconsistent as Saquon Barkley only racked up 56 yards on 13 carries. On defense, Philadelphia managed to generate a few pressures and 2 sacks, but couldn't contain the Bears' run game, and the secondary gave up several medium to long completions that extended drives. Meanwhile, the Chargers enter Week 14 coming off a dominant 31-14 victory over the Raiders, a game in which Justin Herbert managed the offense efficiently despite dealing with a non-throwing hand injury, completing 15 of 20 passes for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Kamani Vidal led a balanced attack on the ground with 126 rushing yards and a 59-yard touchdown run that helped seize momentum early. Los Angeles totaled 192 rushing yards as a team, sustaining long drives and controlling the clock, while the defense limited Vegas to under 160 total yards, forcing a key interception and applying consistent pressure on Geno Smith. Looking ahead, Los Angeles brings a well-rounded attack that balances a tough physical rushing game with efficient passing and a defense capable of bending but not breaking, while Philadelphia will need cleaner execution, better pass protection, and more consistent tackling to stay competitive. With momentum clearly on the side of the Chargers and the Eagles still working to find their rhythm, I'm picking Los Angeles to win and move to 9-4, while Philadelphia falls to 8-5.